and welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be talking about suspension setup. I've been shooting videos a little bit without a plan, so this one's a little bit long-winded, so sorry about that, but it's got some good information in it, so here goes. So let's have a look at shock pressure. So first things first, get yourself a decent pump. This is maybe overkill. It's a Fox digital shock pump. It's super accurate, but remember that it's only accurate to itself. So I don't know who calibrated this pump and where it was calibrated and if it was calibrated properly, but it just means that when I'm using it, that any change that I make, I can see an accurate depiction of the change that I'm making on the digital screen, so it's a little bit easier to use. There, I always start at the back of the bike and set up the shock pressure first. The most important thing before you start setting up shock pressure and so on is turn everything off. So on this shock over here, you'll see that it has a climb switch, open, firm. So I don't want it to be in firm, I want it to be in open. I want the compression dampening not to be fighting against my air pressure. I also want to wind the rebound all the way to the fastest position. The same here, I want to open up the shock and I want to run the rebound as fast as humanly possible. So I'm going to turn the rebound in this case all the way counterclockwise or all the way to the plus position. And the same with the back. If you've got a more advanced shock like this, you'll see that it has two settings for the compression dampening. So there's high and low speed compression dampening, and two settings for the rebound. You want to turn all of those to the fastest or to the off position so that the dampening circuits are not working. So the next step is to sit on the bike by just setting my air pressure or my spring pressure in the shock. That allows me to have the platform where I'm basically sitting, where my main weight is set up on the bike. So what I do is, with an air shock, it's pretty simple. You sit on the bike and you set your feet on the pedals, and then you put your foot down gently on the ground, and you'll have a measurement that you can now take on the rear shock. So I grab my ruler and I measure how much sag I have. So in this case, I have got 14.5 millimeters of sag. I know that my shock length in this particular shock's case is 57 millimeters. So now I've got my shocks sag set up. So I've got, for a cross country or trail bike, about 25% sag is what I want. What I now need to do is set up the fork sag. So again, I take the O-ring on the fork, I push it right down to the seal. So that's sitting at the bottom there. There's different trains of thought here. You can, if you're riding a cross country bike, so only you wanted to set it up for cross country, then you put the seat all the way up and you lean on the front of the bike as if this is where having a friend to help makes a huge difference. But basically there, I'm now in cross-country mode. I've got my weight over the fork and I can now jump off the bike and I'll get a sag setting over here. Now this is a 140 millimeter fork, so 25% of 140 is a lot more than 20 millimeters. So I've got 20 millimeters of sag there, and I want 35 millimeters of sag. But what I've done is I've actually set this bike up in my way of thinking. So my way of thinking is that I'm more of a gravity rider, so I enjoy going downhill and I enjoy going uphill. So I want my fork to be set up so that when I'm in this position, which is basically my downhill riding position, is far, so that I'm kind of in the middle of the bike. My head's basically over the stem. That's where I'm going to be aiming for when I'm heading downhill. Sometimes you're obviously going to be a little bit further back, but I like to think that I can ride this aggressively. So I basically set my suspension up so that my fork seal is down there, gently go down, and then if I measure, I should have about 35 millimeters of sag. And lo and behold, I've got 35 millimeters of sag. If you're riding trail or cross country, you're looking for 20 to 25% sag. If you're riding more enduro downhill gravity type of thing, you're looking for 25 to 30% sag. And then if in the case of a Coil Shock, you don't have the ability to easily set up sag. There's no way of just pumping something into it to make it work differently, and there's also not that much option to measure the amount of sag that you have. But just a couple of tricks. So I went on Fox's website and I miscalculated it, but well, I lied to myself. So at my weight, I should be running a 525 to 550 pound spring. I got myself a 500 pound spring, so there's a little bit too much sag in the bike. I'm getting about 30% sag. But yeah, so you'll see that on the spring there is a number, 500 pounds, and then that's the length of the stroke of the shock. So in this case, it's a 61 millimeter. Actually, no, this is a 57 millimeter stroke shock, but the 61 millimeter spring fits onto it perfectly, and you've got adjustment. So just remember, by adjusting the coil with this ring over here, you are not adjusting anything other than the preload on the spring. That's basically how much pressure is already, or tension is already on the spring before you climb on the bike. And what that does is it makes the spring accelerate faster. It doesn't change how high the bike stands. It does, but not as much as the actual weight of the spring would. So in my case, I actually need to ride a slightly stiffer spring, but you should never be turning this on more than 2 turns, or 1.5 turns to 2 turns. From the time that the preloader hits the spring, you shouldn't turn it more than 1.5 to 2 turns. After that, you're actually defeating the object. There is a trick here. If you want to check your sag, there's this rubber bumper at the bottom of the spring. So in the bottom of the shock, there's a rubber bumper that stops the shock from hitting the metal at the bottom of the shock there. You can push this rubber bumper up against the bottom of the shock body over there, and then from there you've got the ability to be able to then sit on the bike and preload it and then measure. So I know that this is a 57 millimeter stroke shock, so I can take a vernier or a ruler and I can measure how far this moves down, and then I can work out how much sag I have from there. So let's talk a little bit about rebound. So there's my rebound adjustment knob, and what that does is it makes how fast the shock comes back, or changes how fast the shock comes back as it goes into its travel, how quickly it comes back out of its travel. Basically, you're able to adjust from like a pogo stick, where it just shoots back up, to like really like a sofa, and you obviously want it somewhere in between. So this is kind of a feel setting. It's not something that you just an exact chart for, though Fox has a chart on their website, and that comes with most shocks. It tells you how much or how many clicks of rebound to run with each setting, but that is really a baseline. So use their baseline, find it in your instruction manual, use the baseline. But the basic is that you want, when you press your suspension down, you should see how it's coming back here. It's coming back quickly so that it doesn't get stuck down, so that if I hit multiple bumps one after the other, it doesn't stay down in its travel. It's coming back quick enough to be able to handle the next bump, but slowly enough so that it doesn't pogo me off the bike. And what that does is it actually helps grip. So it gives you a little bit more grip. So you want to set it about like that, so as fast as mine was moving there. And then if you're riding in really slippery conditions, so in other words, when it's really, really, really dry and you've just got dust over hard pack underneath, then you can go a little bit slower. You can maybe go 1 or 2 clicks slower. That'll just make the bike feel more planted on the ground as you ride. And then if you're on a really, really, really grippy surface, like practically like tar, or when you're riding in a really good loam or something like that, where you want the bike to like flick around and stuff like that, you can go a little bit faster, so you can speed up your rebound so the shock comes back a little bit quicker. But again, only 1 or 2 clicks. After that, you're actually just changing the setup too far. So that's the shock. And then the fork. The fork is basically the same thing. So with a fork, I like to run my fork a little bit faster than my shock feels. So I like feel how my shock is. That's pretty good. I give my fork a feel, and you can see the fork comes back just a little bit faster. It's not pogo sticking. It is actually pogo sticking. Let's turn it down 1 click. That's because I turned it up just now. So I want my fork to feel like it's coming back at about the same speed as I would naturally pull it back off the ground. So if I jump and pull my fork back off the ground, I should get the wheel leaving the ground about the same time as I would pull it off the ground. So setting the rebound on the fork so that it's just a little bit faster than the shock, it sets the weight bias a little bit back. So in other words, it sets the way the bike kind of comes back through its travel, that it's going to pitch you a little bit backwards. And that basically just is a little bit of a safety net for me. I don't like to feel like I'm diving off the front of the bike, and I don't think anybody really does. So, and because I ride kind of aggressively a little bit over the front, I want the bike to feel like it's, you know, going down a steep section or going through a berm or something like that where the bike is having compression. I don't want it to feel like the back is coming up. I want it to feel like the front is coming up. So the bike will always feel like it's kind of wheeling or manualing or keeping the front end light through coming out of corners or going off steep sections. So that's why I set that like that. Let's have a quick look at compression dampening. So the first tip for compression dampening is don't run any more than you need to start with. You want to run about 1 to 3 clicks of compression dampening, high speed or low speed. It doesn't really matter. You're starting off at around 1 to 3 clicks of compression dampening. That will allow you to have the damping circuit working without it really doing very much. Get a feel for how the bike works, and once you start to feel the need to run more compression dampening, high or low speed, and we'll talk about that in a future episode, then you can start playing with that. To start with, just run the bike with as little compression dampening as possible, so that you can get a feel for how the actual spring or the air pressure and the rebound are working. Once you've got your head around that, once you start looking for more out of the bike, then start playing with compression dampening.
Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, please click the like button. If you like what you see on my channel, please subscribe, and till next time. Cheers.